What happens when a perfect life is built on a catastrophic lie? Bailey Bishop had everything: a sprawling Greenwich estate, a charismatic billionaire husband, and a place at the pinnacle of society. But her husband, Marcus Thorne, had a secret with blonde hair, endless legs, and a name, Serafina. When Bailey caught them in their penthouse apartment, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply turned around, walked out, and vanished from the face of the earth. But it's the letter she left behind, a letter sent not to her husband, but to the world, that ignited a firestorm, destroying an empire and turning a society wife into a legend. The air in Greenwich, Connecticut, smelled of old money and freshly cut grass. From the outside, the estate of Marcus and Bailey Bishop was the very definition of success. It was a sprawling, ivy-covered Georgian mansion that sat on 12 acres of woodland, a monument of stone and glass that seemed to rise organically from the landscape. Inside, Bailey Bishop was adjusting a stem of white orchid in a Ming vase. Everything in her home was perfect, curated with a precision that bordered on the sterile. Bailey herself was like that, pale blonde, elegant, and possessed of a stillness that people often mistook for fragility. She was the perfect wife for a man like Marcus Thorne. Marcus was the sun to her moon. He was dark-haired, charismatic, and vibrating with an energy that dominated every room. He was the founder and CEO of Thorne Dynamo, a green energy company that had promised to solve the climate crisis with its revolutionary Helios core technology. He was lauded on magazine covers as the Tesla of the East Coast, the man who was making sustainable energy not just viable, but profitable and sexy. Tonight was the annual Future Forward Gala, the largest fundraising event for the Thorne Foundation and the undisputed highlight of the Greenwich social calendar. Bailey, as always, was the silent engine behind the event. She had curated the guest list, tasted the food, and approved the seating chart, ensuring rival investors were seated far apart. Marcus found her in the grand hall, tapping at her tablet. He kissed the top of her head, his scent, expensive cologne, and ozone washing over her. "It's perfect, Bailey, as always," he said, his voice a low, appreciative hum. He glanced at his phone, his thumb swiping rapidly. "Arthur Langdon just confirmed the Japanese consortium is in. They're buying another 5%. "That's wonderful, Marcus," Bailey said, her voice quiet. Arthur Langdon was Marcus's CFO, a man with sharp eyes and a shark's smile. "Wonderful. It's revolutionary, darling." He finally looked at her, his smile bright and blinding. "Tonight, we're not just throwing a party. We're announcing the future." He held her by the shoulders, his eyes intense. "In 2 years, Bailey the Helios core will be in every city. This party, it's nothing. We'll buy an island." She smiled, a small, practiced tilt of her lips. "Don't forget the press at 7:15. And your speech. You did review the notes I made." Of course," he said, already distracted by another ping from his phone. "It's just this new campaign. It's vital." Bailey's gaze lingered on his screen for a fraction of a second too long. She saw the name. Serafina. Serafina Vance. The new face of Thorne Dynamo. A model with eyes the color of the Caribbean and a body that seemed to defy gravity. Marcus had been insistent on hiring her, claiming she represented the youthful, vibrant energy of the brand. Bailey had met her. Serafina was all teeth and ambition, a woman who looked at Marcus not with admiration, but with a hunger that was chillingly familiar. It was the same look Marcus got when he was about to close a deal. "I have to take this," Marcus said, already walking away. "It's about the PR rollout for Serafina's shoot. Vital." Bailey stood alone in the cavernous hall. The house was silent save for the distant hum of the catering trucks. She looked at the perfect orchids, the polished marble, and the gilded frames of their perfect life. For the first time, she noticed the faint hairline crack that was spreading from the corner of the vase. She had built this cage. She had polished the bars and locked the door. She had been the perfect supportive wife, the one who had given up her own career to manage his life, his home, and his social standing. Before she was Bailey Bishop, society hostess, she had been Bailey Hayes, forensic accountant. A woman who could find a single falsified decimal point in a mountain of data. A woman who saw patterns where others saw chaos. And she was seeing a pattern now. The late-night meetings, the sudden whispered phone calls, the new encrypted laptop he kept in his briefcase, and the name Serafina, which appeared on his phone with the frequency of a stock ticker. She had ignored it, telling herself it was the price of admission for a man like Marcus. But as she stood in the silence, a cold, hard knot of certainty tightened in her stomach. It wasn't just infidelity. Infidelity was common. This felt different. This felt expensive. She walked to the large French doors and looked out at the grounds. The party would begin in 3 hours. She would smile, she would wear the sapphire gown Marcus had bought her, and she would play the part of the perfect wife. But as she watched the sun dip below the trees, Bailey Bishop made a decision. She wasn't just going to look for the crack. She was going to find out what was causing it. The gala was a resounding success. Marcus was brilliant, his speech painting a vision of a clean, bright future, all powered by Thorn Dynamo. He raised over $20 million for the foundation. Serafina Vance was there, draped in silver, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes and touching his arm a little too often. Bailey watched it all with a serene, fixed smile, accepting compliments on the peonies and the perfection of the sea bass. But her mind was elsewhere. It was on the encrypted laptop in Marcus's study. For the next 2 weeks, Bailey operated in the shadows of her own home. She became a ghost, her movements timed to his. She slept when he was at the office, and she worked when he was asleep. Her former life, the one of meticulous, obsessive detail, came rushing back. She was no fool. She didn't try to guess his password. Marcus was arrogant, but not stupid. Instead, she used a small USB keylogger she'd purchased under a false name. She planted it in the back of his desktop docking station one morning while he was in the shower. She waited 3 days. Then while he was at a board dinner, a dinner she knew via his car's tracker was at a downtown penthouse he kept for investors, she retrieved the drive. She didn't use her own computer. She went to the guest house to a machine she had purchased for cash and set up on a dedicated, untraceable internet connection. The file from the keylogger opened. It was a jumble of keystrokes. It took her an hour to sift through the noise to find the string of 24 characters he had used to access the encrypted laptop. Her fingers trembled as she typed it in. Helios Invictus 1025. The drive mounted. At first, it was what she expected. Memos, marketing plans, contracts. Then she found the folder labeled Personal. Inside a subfolder, SV. It was a flood. Photos, videos, hotel bookings. Serafina Vance, not in the professional high-fashion shots from the campaign, but in hotel robes in his car, on his private jet. It was sordid and undeniable. Bailey felt a brief, cold sting, but she brushed it aside. This was just the symptom. She was looking for the disease. She left the SV folder and went deeper into the core financials. Marcus had always kept her separate from the real business, letting her manage the household books and the foundation, but never Thorn Dynamo itself. He said it was to protect her. She knew it was to control her. She opened a folder named Internal R&D. She found what she was looking for, not in a spreadsheet, but in a long chain of increasingly frantic emails between Marcus and a man she didn't know. A Dr. Evan Reed, former head of engineering. The first email, dated 6 months ago, was from Dr. Reed. Subject: urgent. Helios core instability. Marcus. The test results from the Nevada plant are not just disappointing, they are catastrophic. The core is not holding a sustained charge. The output is 30% of what we've promised investors, and the containment field is showing stress fractures. We are faking the public data. This is not a bug. It's a fundamental design flaw. We have to halt the rollout and tell the board. Marcus's reply was ice cold. Evan, you are overreacting. The data is managed, not faked. We are in a delicate phase of investor confidence. Your job is to fix it, not to panic. Keep this between us. The chain continued for weeks. Dr. Reed becoming more desperate, Marcus becoming more threatening. The final email was from Arthur Langdon, the CFO, sent to Marcus. Subject: the Reed problem. It's handled. His severance package includes a non-disclosure agreement, so ironclad, he won't be able to order a coffee without my permission. He's gone. I've promoted his number 2, who understands team loyalty. Bailey's blood ran cold. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just cutting corners. This was a multi-billion-dollar fraud. Thorn Dynamo, the company that was supposed to save the world, was a house of cards. The Helios core was a lie. She kept digging. She found the real money trail. A shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands, SV Holdings. She had assumed SV stood for Serafina Vance. It did. But it was worse than she thought. Marcus wasn't just paying for his mistress. He was laundering money through her. He had awarded Serafina's modeling agency, a company she'd founded 3 months ago, an exclusive $50 million marketing contract. From there, the money was being funneled from SV Holdings into private offshore accounts. He wasn't just cheating on Bailey. He was cheating the company, siphoning off investor capital into a personal slush fund, using his mistress as the cutout. He was planning to cash out. The stock was at its peak. He was preparing for a massive final round of funding, after which he and Arthur Langdon would sell their shares, leaving everyone else, including the Japanese consortium and the pension funds that had invested, with nothing but a worthless, unstable piece of metal. And Serafina was his accomplice. Bailey sat back, the glow of the monitor illuminating her pale, shocked face. The guest house was silent. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had betrayed everyone. He was a thief dressed in the clothing of a savior. She looked at the evidence, the emails, the bank transfers, the real unfiltered test data from the Nevada plant. She understood. Marcus knew the core was a failure. He was just trying to keep the lie going long enough to get rich. He would ruin thousands of lives. She thought about going to the board. But who on the board was clean Arthur Langdon? He was in on it. The others. They were so blinded by the stock price they'd never believe her. They would side with Marcus, and he would crush her. He would use the photos from the SV folder, paint her as a hysterical, jealous wife, and have her committed. No. She couldn't fight him in his world. She couldn't win in a boardroom or a courtroom. He owned the lawyers, the PR firms, and he thought he owned her. She looked at the drive in her hand. He had built his empire on lies. She would use the truth to tear it down. But first she had to disappear. And to do that, she had to control the narrative of why she was leaving. The fraud was the weapon, but the affair was the motive. She had to be the wronged wife, not the forensic accountant whistleblower. The world understood a woman scorned. It was the perfect cover. Her plan began to form, cold, meticulous, and precise. She wasn't just going to leave him. She was going to excavate him. Bailey Bishop spent the next month living a double life with chilling precision. By day, she was the dutiful, if slightly distant, Mrs. Thorne. She organized his dinners, scheduled his appointments, and nodded serenely when he told her he'd be working late. By night, she was Bailey Hayes, the analyst. She didn't just copy the files from his encrypted drive. She downloaded everything. The company's entire financial history, the falsified engineering reports, the secret contracts, and the damning email chains. She duplicated them onto 5 separate encrypted military-grade hard drives. Next, she began the slow, methodical process of liquidation. She had maintained her own brokerage account from her pre-marriage days. She had been a savvy investor. Over the years, she had also been the primary manager of their household accounts, which Marcus in his arrogance saw as play money, but which she had grown into a substantial 7-figure sum. She began moving assets not in large, suspicious chunks, but in a quiet, steady stream. She transferred the funds through a series of shell corporations she'd built herself over the past 2 weeks, ending in a secure, anonymous bank in Switzerland. A bank that valued privacy above all. She was careful. She took only what was legally hers, her own investments, the money she'd inherited, and the pre-stipulated amount from their prenup. She left his money, the money from Thorne Dynamo, untouched. She wasn't a thief. She was a witness. She secured a new passport and identity. It was expensive dealing with specialists in the digital dark arts, but she paid in untraceable cryptocurrency. She was no longer Bailey Bishop. She was to become Anna Kessler, a German art historian. She studied Marcus's calendar. She knew he kept a penthouse at the new, obscenely expensive 111 West 57th Street in Manhattan. He'd told her it was for entertaining foreign investors. Her tracking of his credit cards told her it was for entertaining Serafina Vance. She found the date, Friday, June 10th. He had told her he was flying to Tokyo for an emergency meeting with the consortium. His flight records, which she'd accessed via his travel rewards account, showed he was flying nowhere. His calendar, however, showed a 7 p.m. reservation at Per Se and a $5,000 order from a high-end lingerie boutique to be delivered to the penthouse. That was the day. She spent that Friday finalizing her exit. The 5 hard drives were packaged. One was sent by secure courier to a bank vault in Zurich. One to a law firm in London she had vetted with a dead man's switch instruction. If you do not hear from me by the 1st of every month, deliver this package to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The remaining 3 were for later. At 6:00 p.m. she left the Greenwich estate. She didn't pack a bag. She left her clothes in the closet, her jewelry in the safe, her phone on the kitchen counter. She walked out wearing a simple black dress, carrying only a purse. Her car was left in the garage. She took a prepaid car service into Manhattan. At 7:30 p.m., she walked into the shimmering lobby of 111 West 57th Street. She didn't need a key. She knew the code to the private elevator. Marcus was sloppy. He used the company's founding date. 0815. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. The scene was exactly as she had pictured. The skyline of Manhattan glittered behind them like a million judging eyes. Champagne glasses were on the marble bar. Music was playing. Marcus was in a silk robe, his back to her, pouring another drink. Serafina Vance was draped on the white sofa wearing the lingerie from the 7 p.m. delivery. They both froze. Serafina's mouth opened in a silent, perfect O of shock. Marcus spun around his face a mask of disbelief, which quickly curdled into fury. "Bailey, what the hell are you? How did you get in here?" This was the moment, the pivot point of her entire life. She was supposed to scream, to cry, to throw the champagne bottle. This was the scene he expected. Bailey Bishop did none of those things. She stood perfectly still in the entryway, her purse held in front of her. She looked at Marcus, her gaze flat and devoid of any emotion. She looked at Serafina, taking in the scene with the dispassionate air of an inspector. "Bailey, I can explain," Marcus stammered, taking a step forward, holding his hands up. "Can you—" Bailey's voice was quiet, but it cut through the music. "She means nothing to me, Bailey. It was a mistake, a stupidity. It's the pressure, the business." Bailey let the silence hang. She watched him squirm, this great man, this savior, reduced to the most pathetic cliché in the book. Serafina, recovering her composure, stood up, clutching the silk robe around her. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice hard. Bailey finally moved. She walked past Marcus, ignoring him completely. She went to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the city. "It's a beautiful view," Bailey said. "All of it, built on sand." "Bailey, listen to me." Marcus pleaded, his voice now tight with irritation. "Let's go home. We can talk about this. We can fix this." Bailey turned to face him. Her expression was one of profound, bottomless pity. "Fix it," she said. "Oh, Marcus, you can't fix this." She looked at Serafina. "He's been lying to you too, you know. That $50 million marketing contract, that isn't for you. It's for him. SV Holdings is his escape hatch. You're just the packaging." Serafina's face went white. Marcus's panic turned to ice. The jig was up, but not the one he thought. What have you been doing, Bailey, snooping in my affairs?" "Affairs, yes," Bailey said. "Both kinds." She turned back to the door. "Bailey, you are not walking out on me." Marcus shouted, his voice echoing in the minimalist room. "You are nothing without me. I made you. You walk out that door, I will destroy you. I will leave you with nothing." Bailey paused at the elevator, her hand on the call button. She turned, and for the first time she smiled. It was a terrifying, hollow thing. "You're right, Marcus. I am leaving you with nothing." She stepped into the elevator. "Bailey!" he roared, lunging for the closing doors, but they sealed shut, reflecting his furious, terrified face back at himself. The elevator descended smooth and silent. Bailey Bishop walked out of the lobby into the warm June night and vanished. Marcus Thorne's fury lasted for exactly 12 hours. He tore the penthouse apart, screaming at Serafina to get dressed and get out. He drove back to Greenwich at 2 a.m, half expecting to find Bailey there with a fleet of lawyers. The house was dark, silent. He stormed into their bedroom. "Bailey?" Nothing. Her clothes were in the closet. Her wedding ring was on the nightstand, placed neatly beside a copy of the Odyssey. He checked the study. Her laptop was there. He checked the safe. The blood drained from his face. It was empty. Not just her jewelry, not just the emergency cash. The spare checkbooks were there, but the ledgers were gone. The small black notebooks where she meticulously tracked the household finances. And the hard drives. The backup drives from his personal safe, which he'd thought were secure. He staggered back. No. He ran to his own study. He powered up his main computer. He tried to log in to the company's secure server from his home terminal. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. User profile M. Thorne. Privileges revoked. What is this? He tried to log into his personal offshore accounts, the ones he'd set up with Arthur Langdon. Account frozen. Pending security verification. A cold, visceral terror, an emotion Marcus hadn't felt since he was a child, gripped him. This wasn't a wife leaving. This was an extraction. He called his office. It was Saturday morning. No one answered. He called Arthur Langdon. It went straight to voicemail. He called the head of his IT department. "Damien, it's Marcus. Someone has locked me out of the server. I think we've been breached. I need you to..." "Mr. Thorne." Damien's voice was shaky. I can't do that, sir. My access was revoked an hour ago by an alpha-level administrator. I thought it was you." "Alpha level? I'm the only alpha, me and Arthur." "No, sir. There was a third. An administrator account we set up for the initial build-out years ago. EH admin. It's been dormant for 6 years. It just became active an hour ago." EH Bailey Hayes. Marcus dropped the phone. She had built the system. He remembered now vaguely. Years ago, before Thorne Dynamo was a giant, back when they were in a tiny office in Stamford. Bailey, with her accounting background, had set up their entire financial architecture. He'd phased her out as the company grew, bringing in real executives like Langdon. He'd forgotten she still had the skeleton keys. She hadn't just copied the data. She had locked him out of his own kingdom. He spent the next 5 days in a blur of mounting panic. He couldn't call the police. What would he say? My wife ran away and took all the evidence of my corporate fraud. He couldn't call his investors. He couldn't call the board. He was blind, trapped in his own glass mansion. He was an emperor with no clothes, and he was beginning to realize no empire. He hired a private investigator, a brutal, expensive man named Gavin Rook, who specialized in discreet retrievals. "Find her," Marcus growled, pacing his study. "She's unstable, hysterical. She took things that don't belong to her." Rook was unimpressed. "She took money. She took data. Sensitive data. Proprietary. And she's your wife. So she's angry. She'll be at a spa in Arizona or a friend's place in the Hamptons. She'll run out of money and come back." "You don't understand," Marcus hissed, his hands shaking. "You need to find her now." For a week, there was nothing. Rook's team hit brick walls. Bailey Bishop had not used a credit card. She had not used her passport. Her phone was still on the kitchen counter. She did not exist. Then on the 8th day after her disappearance, Marcus Thorne's world ended. It didn't start with a phone call. It started with a sound. The sound of a helicopter. He looked out his window and saw a black, unmarked helicopter landing on his perfect front lawn. Men in dark suits with FBI and SEC emblazoned on their vests poured out. At the same time, the gates to his estate, the gates she had the codes for, swung open, and a convoy of black SUVs sped up the driveway. His phone began to scream. It was Arthur Langdon. "Marcus, they're here." The feds are everywhere. They're raiding the office. They have warrants." Marcus stood frozen, his coffee cup slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. A sharp, metallic rap echoed through the hall. "Mr. Marcus Thorne, this is the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest." He didn't move. He just stared at the front door as it was breached, splintering off its hinges. Where was she? How could this? And then his personal assistant, hysterical, called him. "Mr. Thorne, Mr. Thorne, the letter. It's everywhere. It's on the news, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. Oh my God. Mr. Thorne, what did you do?" The letter did not arrive by email at 9:01 a.m. That morning, precisely as the stock market opened, simultaneous packages were delivered by bonded courier to the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal, the head of the SEC's Enforcement Division, and the Attorney General for the Southern District of New York. Each package contained 2 items, a slim 12-page bound letter and a single black encrypted hard drive. The letter was printed on thick watermarked paper. The title on the front, in simple, elegant serif font, read, "An open letter regarding the insolvency and criminal fraud of Thorne Dynamo Inc." It began, "To the investors, employees, and the public trust, my name is Bailey Hayes Bishop. For the past decade, I have been the wife of Marcus Thorne, the celebrated founder of Thorne Dynamo. While the world knew me as a hostess, my husband knew me as his first accountant. It was I who built the financial architecture of his company. It was an architecture he later used not to build a future, but to orchestrate one of the largest corporate deceptions in modern history. I am writing this letter because I can no longer be complicit through my silence in this fraud. Thorne Dynamo is a lie. The Helios core does not work." The letter was not a jilted wife's emotional rant. It was a cold forensic execution. In precise numbered sections, Bailey laid out the entire conspiracy. She detailed the Reed problem, including the suppressed engineering reports from Dr. Evan Reed, who she noted was fired and silenced for telling the truth. She detailed the falsified data that was being fed to investors, showing a 300% performance exaggeration. She detailed the shell corporation SV Holdings and its true purpose. She named Serafina Vance not as a mistress, but as an unindicted co-conspirator in a scheme to launder stolen investor capital. She detailed the imminent plan by Marcus Thorne and CFO Arthur Langdon to initiate a final round of funding, which they intended to use as exit liquidity before selling their shares and bankrupting the company. "Mr. Thorne's infidelity," she wrote in a chilling paragraph, "is a personal matter, but his use of his mistress, Miss Vance, to create a $50 million shell corporation to steal from his own shareholders is a federal crime. The affair was merely a symptom of his true pathology, a pathological greed that has poisoned his company from the root." The Wall Street Journal editor, a woman named Clara Jensen, read the letter with her heart in her throat. It was the biggest story of the year, possibly the decade. It was Enron Madoff and Theranos rolled into one. Get me everyone," Clara stammered to her assistant. "Get our tech team, our legal team, and our financial crimes unit. Now. We have to verify this." They didn't have to wait long. At the bottom of the letter was the final devastating blow. "The enclosed hard drive," Bailey wrote, "contains the entirety of Thorne Dynamo's internal servers. It includes the original unaltered engineering data from the Nevada plant, the full email and text message history of Mr. Thorne and Mr. Langdon, and the complete unredacted bank records from SV Holdings and their associated offshore accounts. The password for the drive is Dreven Reed was right. I have taken these steps because I am in fear for my life. Marcus Thorne is a powerful, vindictive man, and the men he associates with are dangerous. I have disappeared. I am in a safe location, and I have taken precautions. Multiple copies of this drive are in secure locations across the globe. Should any harm come to me, or should any attempt be made to suppress this investigation, the full unencrypted contents of the drive, including materials not provided to you, will be released to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency worldwide. I urge you to act quickly. The market is open, and investors are still buying a lie. It was signed simply, Bailey H. Bishop. The journal didn't even have time to publish. The SEC, moving with a speed that shattered all bureaucratic records, had already seen enough. The letter combined with the drive was not just a smoking gun. It was a full confession, complete with appendices. They hit the sell button on Thorne Dynamo's stock, halting all trading. But it was too late. The news had leaked from inside the SEC. In 12 minutes, Thorne Dynamo's stock, once the darling of the S&P 500, flatlined. It went from $450 a share to $12, then to zero. The headlines were instantaneous and brutal. Thorne Dynamo. CEO arrested in FBI raider. The Bishop letter vanished. Wife exposes multi-billion-dollar Helios fraud, Helios Core. A hoax whistleblower wife claims model Serafina Vance implicated in Thorne conspiracy. By noon, Bailey Bishop was the #1 trending topic in the world. She was the vanished wife, the whistleblower ghost. Marcus Thorne, the man who was going to save the world, was led out of his Greenwich mansion in handcuffs, his face a mask of stunned, uncomprehending rage. The fallout was a nuclear winter. The collapse of Thorne Dynamo wiped out an estimated $70 billion in market value. Pension funds, university endowments, and tens of thousands of retail investors were ruined. The Japanese consortium Marcus had been so proud of was facing financial ruin. The case became the trial of the decade. The US government, humiliated by the scale of the fraud, threw every available resource at it. Arthur Langdon, the shark-eyed CFO, was the first to flip. Faced with life in prison, he agreed to testify against Marcus in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony painted a portrait of Marcus as a narcissistic mastermind who bullied his subordinates into compliance. Serafina Vance was next. Her high-powered lawyers tried to paint her as another one of Marcus's victims, a naive girl duped by a powerful man. That narrative held until the prosecution produced the bank records from SV Holdings, showing wire transfers from her account to purchase a villa in Lake Como and a $3 million diamond. She too testified, claiming Marcus had forced her to participate. No one believed her. She was convicted of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. But the star witness was one who never appeared. Bailey Bishop. Her letter was the centerpiece of the trial. Her hard drive was the prosecution's entire case. The defense team, led by a high-priced lawyer named Benjamin Croft, tried to have her evidence thrown out. "This is inadmissible," Croft argued. "It is the fruit of a poisoned tree. This is evidence stolen by a vindictive, jealous wife. She broke into his computer. She stole his private property. This is a revenge fantasy, not a legal case." The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Tricia Warren, overruled him. "Mr. Croft, your client, is accused of defrauding the public of $70 billion. The The private property you're referring to is evidence of that crime. The source's motive, be it jealousy, civic duty, or a love of opera, is irrelevant. The evidence is the evidence. It stands. The trial was a circus. The key email to Evan Reed was right became a national catchphrase. Dr. Evan Reed himself was brought in to testify, a quiet, broken man who finally got to tell his truth. He explained in devastating technical detail how the Helios core was a physical impossibility and how his data had been systematically altered. Marcus Thorne's defense was pure arrogance. He testified that Bailey was unstable, that Dr. Reed was a disgruntled employee, that Arthur Langdon was the real mastermind. He claimed he was a visionary, not an accountant, and that he was unaware of the day-to-day minutiae. The prosecution's closing argument lasted 2 hours. The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. Marcus Thorne was found guilty on all 28 counts: securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. At the sentencing, Marcus, finally broken, wept and begged the judge for mercy. Judge Warren was unmoved. "Mr. Thorne, you have not just stolen money. You have stolen the public's trust. You preyed on their hope for a better future and sold them a lie. You destroyed the lives of your employees, your investors, and the one person who seems to have ever told you the truth, Dr. Reed. You are the architect of your own destruction." Marcus Thorne was sentenced to 45 years in a federal penitentiary. The media, deprived of Bailey, turned Marcus into the ultimate villain. But the question remained: where was Bailey Bishop? The PI Marcus had hired, Gavin Rook, was now being paid by news agencies to find her. He found nothing. She had used no planes, trains, or automobiles registered to her. The Anna Kessler identity was a ghost, a legend. She had simply evaporated. The world media painted her as a folk hero, a mysterious avenger. She was the woman who had brought down an empire with a single letter. But she was nowhere to be found. 9 months, 274 days since she had stepped into that elevator, leaving one life in a shattered penthouse and descending into the unknown of another. Florence, Italy. The afternoon sun, the color of warm honey and old Chianti, spilled across the Piazza Ognissanti. Here the air smelled of roasting coffee and centuries-old stone, a stark welcome contrast to the metallic, sterile scent of old money and cut grass in Greenwich. At a small wrought-iron table in the corner of a cafe, a woman sat sketching the intricate facade of the church across the square. She was slim, dressed in a simple cream-colored linen blouse and dark trousers. Her hair was short, a rich, deep brunette cut in a chic, severe bob that framed a face which, while familiar in its bone structure, was entirely new. The pale, fragile, blonde Bailey Bishop was gone. In her place was Anna Kessler, a woman with a gaze that was not still but settled. Anna Kessler was an art historian, specializing in the restoration of Renaissance frescoes. She spoke Italian with a faint, academic German accent, a fiction she had practiced into fact. She lived in a modest but elegant apartment overlooking the Arno, a place filled with books and light and entirely empty of gilded cages. She had been Bailey for a decade. She had been Anna for 9 months. It was only now that she was beginning to feel like herself. She paused, her sketching, her charcoal pencil hovering over the paper. The last 9 months had not been a vacation. They had been an exorcism. The first few weeks in particular had been a masterclass in controlled terror. She allowed her mind to drift back past the art classes, past the quiet nights, to the moment the elevator doors had sealed her in and Marcus out. Flashback, the escape. The descent from the 57th Street penthouse was the longest 60 seconds of her life. She had not pressed the button for the lobby. That was where he would expect her, where he could have security stop her. She had pressed the button for the P2 parking garage. The doors opened to a cool concrete silence. She walked, not ran, to the stairwell. She took the stairs up, not down, emerging into a service corridor she had mapped from the building's blueprints weeks before. It let her out onto 58th Street, a full block away from the grand entrance, a ghost exiting through the walls. She walked 10 blocks east, melting into the Friday night throng of tourists and theater-goers. Bailey Bishop, in her bespoke black dress, would have drawn a car. Anna Kessler, in her infancy, needed to be invisible. Her first stop was a 24-hour gym near Port Authority, a place of transient, anonymous humanity. Her go bag wasn't a bag at all. It was a prepaid locker, secured under a false name 2 months prior. Inside the humid, metallic-smelling locker room, she stripped off the skin of Bailey Bishop. The black dress, the Manolo Blahniks, the delicate diamond earrings, all went into a trash receptacle. She wiped off her subtle, expensive makeup with a rough paper towel. From the locker, she pulled on a pair of nondescript grey trousers, a simple black t-shirt, a pair of running shoes, and a faded denim jacket. The final piece was a wig, shoulder-length, mousy brown. It was unflattering. It was perfect. Bailey Bishop had walked in. A tired, unremarkable commuter walked out. She didn't go to JFK. She didn't go to Grand Central. Any terminal with a federal presence was a risk. Marcus would have her name on a no-fly list within an hour, claiming she was unstable, a danger to herself. Instead, she walked to the Port Authority bus terminal. She paid cash for a one-way ticket on a Greyhound bus to Montreal. The 12-hour ride was a unique, grinding form of psychological torture. Every time the bus slowed, every time it pulled into a dimly lit rest stop in upstate New York, her heart hammered against her ribs. She expected to see his face, or worse, the impassive, brutal face of his investigator, Gavin Rook, stepping onto the bus. She sat in a window seat, her head down, pretending to sleep, her muscles so tense they ached for days. She crossed the Canadian border at 5:00 a.m. The border agent, sleepy and bored, glanced at the American passport she'd presented, one of 3. She'd had prepared this one for a Mary Ann Peters, and waved her through. In Montreal, she went to a small independent bank where she had a small, clean account. She withdrew $10,000 in cash, then went to a different bus station and bought a ticket to Toronto. From Toronto, she finally used her real forged identity. She walked into Pearson International Airport, not as Bailey or Mary Ann, but as Anna Kessler, a German citizen with a pristine passport, a backstory, and a one-way ticket to Geneva, Switzerland. She had spent the next 7 days in a small, clean, anonymous hotel room in Geneva, a stone's throw from the bank that held her new life. Those 7 days were the true test. She had lit the fuse. Now she had to wait for the explosion. She lived on room service, watching the world through a secure, encrypted laptop. She had one open line of communication, a Proton Mail account connected to Mr. Alastair Finch, the quietly ruthless senior partner at her chosen London law firm. She had sent her single pre-arranged message. Subject: the nightingale is in the nest. The package is live. If you do not receive a stand down command by 0800 GMT, Friday 17th, you are to execute instructions per our agreement. No further contact will be made. For a week, the financial news was silent. Thorn Dynamo stock was at an all-time high. Marcus was on the cover of Forbes again. She felt a sickening lurch. Had she miscalculated? Had he found the breach? Had he somehow covered his tracks? Invalidated her evidence and was even now sending Rook to hunt her down. She didn't sleep. She just watched the stock ticker. Then on the morning of the 8th day it happened. She was watching Bloomberg when the red banner flashed across the bottom of the screen. TRNE. Trading. Halted. Pending news. Bailey's breath hitched. She stared, unblinking. The ticker vanished. The screen cut to a breaking news anchor, his face grim. "We are getting astonishing unconfirmed reports from New York. Federal agents from the FBI and the SEC are conducting a massive coordinated raid on the Greenwich, Connecticut estate of billionaire Marcus Thorne, as well as the Manhattan headquarters of Thorne Dynamo." The anchor's voice faded. Bailey looked down at her hands. They were shaking a violent, uncontrollable tremor that seemed to come from her very bones. And then she saw it. Her letter. A journalist was holding it up, reading excerpts aloud. "A multi-billion-dollar fraud. The Helios core does not work. My name is Bailey Hayes Bishop." She was real. It had worked. She watched mesmerized as the anchors, the pundits, and the financial analysts tried to comprehend the scale of it. They showed the footage Marcus, his face a mask of purple apoplectic rage, being led in handcuffs from his marble-floored hall. They showed Serafina Vance looking cheap and terrified, being taken from her penthouse. Bailey did not feel joy. She did not feel triumph. She felt the catastrophic, agonizing release of a 10-year-old tension. It was the sound of a load-bearing wall finally crumbling. She leaned over the hotel room desk and was physically ill. When it was over, she stood up, washed her face, and deleted the email account. She packed her single bag, walked out of the hotel, and went to the bank. She accessed the Swiss vault, retrieved her remaining funds, and boarded a train. Not to Rome or Paris or London, too obvious. She went to Florence, a city of rebirth, a city where masterpieces were made lost and painstakingly restored. Present day. Piazza Ognissanti. Anna Kessler closed her sketchbook. The memory of the escape had lost its sharp, terrifying edge. It was now just a story. A waiter set a small, folded newspaper on her table. La Repubblica. She nodded her thanks. The headline was stark, the photo all too familiar. Marcus gaunt and grey, his bespoke suit replaced by an ill-fitting prison jumpsuit, stared blankly from the front page. The Wall Street Typhoon sentenced to 45 years. She read the article dispassionately. It detailed his final weeping plea for mercy. It detailed the judge's blistering condemnation. It mentioned the thousands of lives ruined, the pension funds obliterated. It mentioned her la moglie scomparsa, the vanished wife. The mysterious, heroic whistleblower who had brought him down and disappeared, a modern-day folk legend. She felt a flicker of nothing. Not pity, not satisfaction. He was just a variable in a solved equation. Her encrypted phone, a device she used only once a month, vibrated on the table. A new message. It was from Alistair Finch. Subject Phase 2. Complete. Madam, the U.S. government has finalized the SEC Victim Compensation Fund. As per your irrevocable directive executed the day of your departure, your entire spousal asset claim, $84.5 million, after liquidation and taxes, has been anonymously endowed. The Evan Reed Foundation for Technical Truth is now capitalized in perpetuity. Its first action enclosed was a success. We await any further instructions, though we understand none are forthcoming. Be well. AF. Her fingers steady now opened the attachment. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a small, obscure press clipping from a Californian tech journal. Young engineer wins suit against biotech firm. The story was simple. A 28-year-old woman, a junior engineer named Priya Sharma, had been fired for refusing to sign off on falsified data for a new medical device. She had been blacklisted, threatened, and was drowning in legal fees. Then an anonymous foundation had stepped in, the Reed Foundation. It had provided her with a legal team that outmatched the corporations. It had protected her from media harassment, and it had funded her defense until she had not only won her wrongful termination suit, but had forced a federal inquiry into the company's practices. Anna closed the phone. That was her victory. Not Marcus in chains. Not her name in the headlines. This quiet, unknown engineer who had told the truth and had not been destroyed for it. The money Marcus had stolen, the money he had used to build his lies, was now being used to protect the truth. It was the most perfect forensic justice she could imagine. Bailey Bishop had not done it for revenge. Revenge is a hot, messy, passionate act. This had been an audit. This was the balancing of the books. Marcus, Serafina, Arthur Langdon. They were just rounding errors she had to correct. She looked at the newspaper photo of her former husband one last time. He wasn't a monster. He was just a decimal point in the wrong place, a miscalculation that had threatened the integrity of the entire system. And Bailey Hayes, the forensic accountant, had simply finally corrected the balance sheet. Anna Kessler paid for her coffee in cash and gathered her sketchbook. She slid her sunglasses on, hiding her eyes, but not her presence. She stood, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to be invisible. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was simply Anna. She had her work, her art, and her freedom. She walked out of the cafe and into the warm, golden light of the piazza. She did not disappear into the crowd. She joined it. Bailey Bishop's story is a masterclass in calculated consequences. She proved that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous, and that the truth, when weaponized correctly, can topple any empire. But what do you think? Was Bailey a hero? A whistleblower who served justice, or was she a vengeful woman who took the law into her own hands? Did Marcus and Serafina get what they deserved? We want to hear your take on this incredible real-life drama. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. If you love stories of complex characters, shocking twists, and justice served cold, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more true life stories that are stranger than fiction. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you're the first to know when our next story drops.